So we're waiting for a couple of minutes. That's that right, Zeynep?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Shall I turn my camera off while we wait, or shall I just stay here?
I think they can see how handsome you are.
Oh, you flatter me. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm fully branded up with as many Macquarie stuff as I can. T-shirts, logos.
Yeah, that's the best way to promote your university.
Sure. And the background that you can see is not the real background. If you could see the real background, it's very disappointing, my office.
I will start the webinar. Merhaba arkadaşlar, hepiniz IEFTalks Webinarları'na hoş geldiniz. Bugün Sydney'in kalbinde yer alan dünya sıralaması ilk 150'deki Macquarie University'de okumanın avantajlarını Anthony'den dinliyor olacağız. Lütfen sorularınızı soru cevap bölümünden yönlendirmeyi unutmayın. Yes, Anthony, the stage is yours now.
Okay, thank you very much. And merhabalar, hoş geldiniz. That's the limit of my Turkish. I used to live in Istanbul many, many years ago, but my Turkish is faded away. I'm sorry. So I'll stick to the language I'm most comfortable with, which is English. My name is Anthony, and I represent Macquarie University, which is in Sydney, in Australia. And I'm going to do a presentation for you now. Should take about 20 minutes or so. But in the meantime, if you have any questions at all, please type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, actually, I think. There we go. Zainab is saying, please type your questions into that little box down there. And when we finish the webinar, the presentation rather, we can go through those questions that you've got. So in the meantime, have a look at the presentation, come up with a question, pop it into the chat box, and we'll go through it at the end. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. And slideshow. Right, so there we go. Slide one. So as I said, my name is Anthony Bradley. I'm the regional director at Macquarie University, and I look after all of Europe, all of Middle East, and all of Africa. Turkey actually falls into the region of Europe for us. I know that 98% of Turkey is in Asia and only 2% in Europe, but for all intents and purposes, we've managed to push all of Turkey into the European region, which will work out very well for you guys in terms of scholarships, which we'll talk about at the end. Right, first of all, a little bit about the country of Australia. I know that Turkish students generally do favor places like the UK or European countries, or even places like Canada and the US. But we are beginning to see now an increasing amount of interest in Australia for Turkish students. And I should actually point out that I am originally from the UK myself. I was born in the UK, I grew up in the UK, but I did spend a very, very long time, nearly 20 years living in Australia, and I can solidly vouch for the fact that the quality of life and the quality of education is fantastic over there. So that's a little bit about what the university setup of the country looks like. We have 42 universities across 6 states and 2 territories. And Macquarie University is located here in New South Wales, okay, which is not the largest state, but it is the busiest state. The Australian education sector really does punch above its weight. And what I mean by that is, despite a population of only 25, 26 million people, we've got 15 of the world's top 200 universities. We've got 28 of the world's top 500 universities. It's the 5th largest student destination in the world, after the UK, Canada, US, and South Africa, believe it or not. Well over 500,000 international students from more than 150 countries, and we've got more than 3 million Australian alumni spread out across the whole world. So what makes Australia an attractive place to study? So number one, world-class education system. So we've based our education system on the UK education system. You finish high school, you do a bachelor's degree, you finish a bachelor's degree, you do a master's degree, and then you can branch off into research if you like. We have very favorable government policies. And what we mean by that is we recognize that in order to attract students, we've got to grant them certain benefits and rights. So what we do in Australia is that your student visa has a work permit embedded into it, which entitles you to 48 hours of part-time work while you're studying and full-time during the holidays. And currently at the moment, once you've graduated from your degree, as long as it is more than 2 years or more, you will get a 2-year post-study work visa to stay in the country to work. And unlike some countries, you do not have to find work in the same area you studied. So if you do a master's degree of business analytics, theoretically you can drive a taxi or work in McDonald's for 2 years afterwards, but I don't recommend you do that. We have wonderful weather and lifestyle. So having grown up in the UK where it rains a lot of the time, it was a breath of fresh air for me to go and live in Australia where when it's summer, it's blue sky, you can get down the beach. There are more outdoor swimming pools in Sydney than there are in the whole of the UK. So the quality of life over there is very good. That's partially buoyed up by the high currency, the high salaries available when you work. Very multicultural society. If you know your history, Australia was sort of discovered by Captain Cook 250 years ago or so. And since then, we've had waves of migration from everywhere. So you'd be walking down the street in Sydney, you'll hear a dozen different languages. There is a growing Turkish diaspora as well. And this has resulted in multi-level layers of multiculturalism, not just people coming over there, but restaurants, clothes shops, all reflect the various people that have migrated to the country. It is a very safe and secure country. Australia has a very small upper class and a very small lower class, but a very large middle class, which drives the economy. And this means that salaries are high, the police are paid well, corruption levels are low, crime rate is low, unemployment is low, but there are safety nets for people that do fall through the cracks. So the quality of life is great because of that safety and security. Very high starting salaries and part-time work. This is a reason why a lot of people from the UK go and live in Australia because of that. Now, Sydney is not the capital city of Australia. A lot of people do think that, but in much the same way, if you go to Australia and ask what is the capital city of Turkey, most people will say Istanbul, when in fact it's Ankara. And that's the same with Sydney, Sydney and Canberra. Sydney is the biggest city, Canberra is the capital city. So Sydney, 5.5 million people, the largest state economy in the whole of the country, top 5 safest cities in the world, top 10 student cities in the world, and top 7 livable cities in the world. And what they use as criteria to decide that is things like access to infrastructure, so public transport, medical facilities, leisure facilities like cinemas and sports centers, access to the open air, fresh air index, so pollution index. So there's a whole bunch of criteria that they use to decide. And Sydney is consistently in the top 7 cities in the whole world for living. As I said, it's a lovely part of the world. Everybody knows that. You can see that little video in the background. You've got the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. You can climb that bridge if you want to. I did it last year. It's quite an interesting experience. So Australians balance their lives very, very well indeed. So when you finish work or you finish study and your pen goes down and the office door shuts, you get out, you hop on the train, you go down the beach, you go and climb the Harbour Bridge, you go and have a barbecue outside. So as I said, I can't emphasize this enough, being originally from the UK, the quality of life in Australia is second to none. Now, why Macquarie University? We are a very large university set on 3 square kilometers of land, which is 126 hectares. It's like a park. And even though it's a government university, it's not a private university. The university does own this land, and we've turned it into a wonderful place to study. So it was established in 1964, roughly 40,000 students. About a quarter of our students are international from over 130 countries. Very flexible courses, which we'll talk about later. We are not in the downtown Sydney city centre itself. We are about 15 kilometres northwest. But as I'll explain later, we have a very, very efficient public transport infrastructure that takes you wherever you want. This, for me, is the key part, and I will talk about it later. We use the equity in the land to produce office space for more than 300 companies on the campus, which means that the proximity between your academic study areas and your the industrial area is very, very close, resulting in very, very good work opportunities. We have our own train station, and we've got a number 1% ranking in the top world universities. So a little bit more about the university. We're ranked in the top 1% of the world universities. Now, obviously, that is absolutely meaningless unless you know how many universities are in the world. So according to Wikipedia, there are at least 26,000 registered universities in the world, and we are ranked number 133. So we sit at the very, very top. We've got more than 15 subject areas ranked in the top 150, and we are in Sydney's fastest growing region. For those of you that have ever been to Australia and seen Sydney, Sydney city centre is a very high density living area. Macquarie University is located in one of the developing corridors out to the northwest. And we are consistently ranked very highly on a global stage in terms of our programs. So top 50 in the world for philosophy, linguistics, data science, and artificial intelligence. Top 150 for that list of programs, top 250 for this. So we continuously put efforts in to make sure that our programs are very, very highly ranked. We've also got the number 1 ranking in Sydney for teaching quality for both undergraduate and postgraduate programs. And that quality is determined by things like class size, overall results, salaries earned by students once they graduate. So all these criteria contribute to a very, very good regulation for us. We are also a leader in global education. So we've got over nearly 250,000 alumni around the world. And we have more than 4,000 partner institutions around Australia and the globe. So one thing that you'll find about Australian universities is that they're not only academic institutions, but there's a lot of outreach to industrial application, to collaboration, to program development, to symposium presentations and things like that. And that's one of the things that Macquarie does very well. Now we're going to have a quick look at a video of the campus. And this will take a couple of minutes, so it will give you some insight into what it looks like.
Welcome to the Macquarie University campus. Did you know that when the Macquarie campus was established more than 50 years ago, it was done with collaboration at its heart? Our visionary founders chose a bold location away from the city centre, but an area where they predicted Sydney would boom. And they weren't wrong. Our stunning 126-hectare campus is uniquely located in the heart of not only Australia's, but the Southern Hemisphere's largest high-tech precinct. Such a location enables you to connect and collaborate with future employers in some of the country's leading organisations while you're still studying. Through internships and other practical work experiences, as well as through degrees that have been co-designed with industry partners, you'll gain the knowledge and skills you'll need to meet the current and future challenges of your chosen profession. Okay, so it's great that there's an amazing hub of innovation right next door to the campus, but what about the actual campus? Having had more than $1 billion invested in the campus in recent years, Macquarie is home to some of Australia's most exceptional facilities. Our newest building, One Central Courtyard, is where you're going to love spending a lot of your on-campus downtime. Standing atop grass and paved courtyards, this central hub is home to the iconic U-Bar, as well as 16 food outlets. There's also an awesome terrace that overlooks the lake. Yep, we have a lake. It's also home to our new on-campus student residential accommodation, which features studio, twin and apartment options, communal social areas, and 24/7 on-campus security. If you're in need of some quiet study time, you'll most likely head to the library. Only 10 years old, the library provides access to millions of print and electronic resources. It features group and quiet study areas, computers, printers and copiers, presentation practice pods, and a cafe. And if you're into sport and fitness, you're going to love our Sport and Aquatic Centre, which features 2 pools, a gym, courts, and fields. So, that's a snapshot of our campus. But how do I get from one facility to the next, you ask? That will be down Wally's Walk, named after Macquarie architect planner Dr. Walter Abraham. This central pathway runs the entire length of the university and links all corners of our amazing campus. I'm sure you'll agree, our campus is pretty spectacular. There's so much more to show you, and we can't wait for you to visit sometime soon.
So I'm sure that you'll agree that that is a very, very nice looking campus. It's very, very new in as much as during the pandemic, we spent nearly $500 million Australian dollars on developing it. And as you can see from that picture behind it, it's a very modern setup. In that presentation, in the video, they mentioned restaurants. One of the restaurants on the university is actually called Istanbul. So you can have your köfte and your iskender kebabs and everything there. So we even have a Turkish restaurant on campus. We are also Australia's first and only fully integrated health precinct. So we're the only Australian university with its own private, not-for-profit hospital actually as part of the campus. So if you come and study clinical science, medical science, public health, chiropractic science, psychology, or anything with us, you'll find yourself not just working with the hospital, but with the outreach of the hospital as well. So our vice chancellor used to play an important role in Harvard Medical School, and he's carrying that ethos on through Macquarie University as well. So it is a good area if you want to get involved in some of the health sciences as well. Of course, we've got a library. I will confess that when I was a student, I never spent much time in the library, but this particular library, I'm sure you would like to spend more time in. It's all Wi-Fi, it's all set up. There's private study areas, and you've got access to millions and millions of books. Now, as I mentioned, we actually have the university itself is actually a transport hub in itself. So we've got a metro station right on the campus. So if you're finishing your studies and you want to go into town, you can literally walk out of your study area, just down the road, straight into the metro and straight into the city centre itself. And a new rail line was opened recently, which will take you from the university to the city centre in 18 minutes. And the trains run every 4 minutes. Now, I don't know, I mean, I've been to Istanbul and I've been to Turkey many, many times. And if you are in a car in Istanbul on a Friday afternoon when it's raining, in 18 minutes, you're not going to go more than 100 meters. So just think that even though we're 15 kilometers away from the city center, the 18 minutes later, you can be in downtown via this metro. And that's a little bit more of a sort of a map-like view of where we are. As you can see, the city center here is right in the middle, where you've got the Opera House and you've got the Harbour Bridge. And Macquarie University is 15 kilometers northwest. So you will have access to things like you've got Manly Beach up here. You've got Bondi Beach down there, which you can access directly from the university. If you go out to the west, you've got the Blue Mountains straight out to the west by 2 or 3 hours. We also have a downtown campus, the Sydney City campus, and that is for students who are doing their MBA or applied finance, some of the more flagship postgraduate programs. Now, I mentioned early on about the 300 companies that we have on campus. This is, for me anyway, one of the key profiling parts of the university. So as I said, we use the equity in the land. We've got offices that house. These are not just small companies. These are huge companies like Microsoft, AstraZeneca, Canon, Cochlear, Fujitsu, Johnson & Johnson, Hyundai. These all use our university campus space for their own offices. So you can imagine that there's a lot of crossover, there's a lot of engagement between the academic side of things and the industrial application side of things. And if you have a look at this slide was sent to me a couple of months ago. A friend of mine was at the World Economic Forum, and it lists the fastest growing jobs in blue on the left-hand side and the fastest declining jobs in red and orange on the right-hand side. And if you look at those jobs down the left-hand side there, you can see a distinct pattern in what is becoming important. Things like fintech, big data, AI, business analytics, UI and UX designing, data analysis, environmental engineering, renewable energy systems. And these are areas that Macquarie University really does excel in. And like I said, if you go to university, you're going to have at least a couple of years there. By the time you graduate, you will find that the relevance of what you studied will be directly applicable to the real world. And because of the proximity between the industrial side and the university, we actually have the #1 ranking in Sydney for graduate employment. And we try and enforce this by putting internships into degrees. Now, we don't do this at master's level. Some of our masters have internships, but most don't. But if you come out of a high school in Turkey and you come and do a bachelor's degree with us, anything that you study at bachelor's level with us will contain an internship. It's called professional and community engagement. So whether you're doing a bachelor's degree in engineering or media or business or whatever, you will have an opportunity to get work experience in that area. So we strongly recommend that if that's what you're doing, when you graduate, when you do your internship, you should be collecting email addresses and WhatsApp numbers and contact details, because when you graduate from your degree, you'll get a 2-year post-study work visa, and ideally you've got a bunch of contacts that you can then get in contact with and say, hey, remember me? I did some work with you a couple of years ago. So it's all about creating students who are work ready, but then you developing your own platforms and your own contacts when you do graduate. We also have a careers and employment service. And essentially what this does is it gets your foot in the door for an interview. We don't guarantee you jobs, of course, but we will do our best to try and get you ready for work. So we'll help you to tailor make your application for the job. We'll help to tweak your CV to make sure it's right. We can do interview technique to go through everything that you need to get into that interview. This is something that's not often talked about, but it's really, really important. Macquarie University's got more than 200 agreements with other universities around the world. So if you come and study with us, you could go and spend a semester in China or a semester in Canada or a semester in Peru or Colombia or the UK. We do have an exchange agreement with Koç University in north of Istanbul. But obviously, if you are Turkish, you're not allowed to come back to your home country on exchange. So pick another country and you've got 200 opportunities to choose from. We're a comprehensive university, like all Australian universities, which means we have set faculties. Business school, ranked #2 in Australia, I should point out. Faculty of Science and Engineering, Faculty of Arts, Faculty of Medicine, Health and Human Sciences, and importantly, we have Macquarie University College. Now, in Australia, we finish high school in year 13. In Turkey, you finish at year 12. So there is a 1-year gap between your finishing high school and Australians finishing high school, which means that if you finish a Turkish high school, you don't go directly into a bachelor's degree. You come through a diploma program. Now, we don't make students do a foundation year. Oh, hang on. Let me go back a second. Jumping ahead of myself here. So what we do is you would do this. You finish your high school in Turkey. You do a 1-year diploma with us, and then you go into the second year of a bachelor's degree. So a bachelor's degree of business, for example, is 3 years. You finish your school in Turkey, whether it's Bahçeşehir or Akazaga or Mefi. You do a diploma year with us, you come into the second year of the program. You're not doing a foundation year. You don't have to do a foundation year. You come and do a diploma, and then you go into the program. There are 12 main areas of study: arts and social sciences, business, education, engineering, IT, languages and linguistics, law, media communications, medicine and health, psychology, cognitive science, science, security, intelligence, and criminology. So it's a hugely comprehensive academic area, and it's actually easier if I just tell you what we don't have. So we don't have chemical engineering, we don't have nursing, we don't have aviation, we don't have pharmacy, okay? We don't have veterinary science. Pretty much everything else we do have. We also have Australia's largest range of one-year master's degrees. Now, I do understand that most students, international students, when they come to us, to Australia, they want a 2-year master's degree because they want to get that post-study work visa when they finish. However, some students don't want to stay after they finish. They want to go to Australia, 1-year master's degree, hold a koala or a kangaroo on a Saturday, come back home, and finish with a 1-year master's, which we can accommodate. We also have a massive range of master's degrees that are 2 years and double master's degrees. So you can combine programs like international relations and commerce, marketing and media and comms, law and trade and commerce law. So we are very, very flexible in how we can map programs together to make a 2 years master's degree for you. Now, how do you get in? If you come out of high school and you've done the Turkish Devlet Lise diploması, then you will go into the diploma as long as your high school lise score result is 4 out of 5. You will need to do a foundation year if it is less than 4 out of 5. If you, as I said, if you've got 4 out of 5 from high school, you go into the diploma year and then the second year of the bachelor's degree. We also obviously recognize IB scores at every single level. If you're coming into a postgraduate program, in Australia, we work out of a scale of 4. So to get into a 2-year master's degree, you need the equivalent of 2.5 out of 4. So what's that? 65, 70%. And that will get you into a 2-year master's degree. You need a little bit higher score if you want to do a 1-year master's degree, and you will need equivalent of 4, a 3 out of 4, if you want to do a double master's degree. Australia is an English language speaking country, as you know, which means you would have to do an English language test to get into the program. Even if, like for example, with Koch University, even though they teach everything in English up there, you'd still need to do an IELTS or a TOEFL or a Pearson's to get that, to come into the university and to get the visa for that matter. We've got an excellent website, and we can share all this information with you later. Basically, if you can remember courses.mq.edu.au, that will take you to our courses website where you can check everything about the program, the entry requirements, the scholarships, the fees, and it will also do the calculation of your home program into the Australian equivalent so you can see what the entry requirements are. Sorry if I'm rushing through everybody. I'm just trying to get it through in the next 5 minutes or so we've got time for some questions. Most Australian universities have 2 intakes per year. Session 1 starts at the end of February. Session 2 starts at the end of July. And you can start at either point for most degrees. Things like psychology and medicine, actuarial science, you have to start in February. But most of our programs, you can start in either February or July. If you're coming through the college program of diploma, you've actually got 5 potential starting points, which is very, very useful. Now then, accommodation. We've got on-campus accommodation, which is the first choice for most students, okay? You can wake up in the morning, roll out of bed, go to your classes, and you don't need to worry about off-campus lease agreements. In saying that, we have off-campus accommodation through our residential colleges, through private providers, and a whole range of accommodation options. The one thing I will say to you that is really, really important is that if you apply to us and you get an offer, don't wait before picking your accommodation. Get onto it as quickly as you can. Because if you read any Australian newspaper at the moment, there's accommodation shortage. So first come, first served. Apply to us, get an offer, put a deposit down on an apartment on campus or off campus or wherever you fancy, If you, for one reason or another, if you don't decide to come to us, you get that deposit back anyway. But it's important that you get in as quickly as you can to ensure that you've got a place to stay. In terms of student support, we put a lot of emphasis onto the fact that we recognize students are paying a lot of money to come a long way to study with us. So we want to make sure that you're well supported. So we've got a team of dedicated counselors and mentors and student psychologists to help with any issues. So this sits within campus well-being. So if you find yourself homesick or culture shock or just having a really bad day, you can always contact these people and they will try and help you out. We've got a numeracy center and a learning skills workshop, which is designed to help you with your academic skills, medical clinic on campus, free airport pickup. So we are there to help you have a good experience. Now, I mentioned balancing your life. We've got a sports and aquatic center, 2 swimming pools, gyms, tennis courts, basketball courts, football courts, you name it. We also have more than 300 student groups and societies. So we've got everything from sporting clubs, of course, but we've got debating societies. We've got stamp collecting societies. We've got a Harry Potter appreciation society, whatever they do there. And I learned yesterday that we actually have a Taylor Swift appreciation society. So make sure you do join one of those and let me know what happens in them. You can work part-time, as I mentioned. You've got 48 hours allowance over a 2-week period and full-time during the holidays. And as part of your visa application process and process applying to us, you will also have an overseas student health cover, which covers you for emergency support, virtual on-campus support services. It's mid-range cover, and you have to actually pay for it. I should say you only have to pay for it once. It's an initial payment at the beginning of your application, and it lasts the duration of your visa. Now, our fees, we're not the most expensive university in Australia. We're not the cheapest. We're right in the middle. Our fees, on average, for a bachelor's or a master's is about 45,000 Australian dollars per year, which is about 30K American, but not for medicine. Medicine's a bit higher. And you will also need 30,000 Australian or 20,000 American for living expenses per year. That's on average. So you're looking at about 75,000 per year for your food, accommodation, transport, and program. However, we do have a generous scholarship system, and this is the one that is of most interest for you guys, is that if you are a Turkish citizen, or indeed any one of the European countries, we will give you a $10,000 per year scholarship guaranteed. It's not academic, it is simply a regional-based scholarship, which means, as I said, our programs are 45,000 Australian dollars. For Turkish students, that 45 becomes 35. We do have other scholarships, and you can just go onto Google and type in International Scholarships Macquarie University, and that will give you the full list that you would be eligible for as Turkish citizens. We've got a couple of merit-based scholarships, a couple of faculty-based scholarships. They do chop and change, but the 10,000 one is the one that I can guarantee. And that is an overview of what the university looks like from above to give you some idea. Now then, that is pretty much the end of the presentation. We've got a little bit of time for a chat and some questions. So let's have a look. Let me just so let's have a look at the Q&A questions that we've got here. If you've written in English, how are students assessed, says Mr. Anonymous Attendee. So what we look at, as I said in the entry requirements, depending on what you're applying for, you have to meet entry requirements. So we would look at your academic transcript. To get into the university itself, I'll put that over there. To get into the university itself, we are essentially mostly going to look at your academic background. So if you want to get into a Bachelor of Engineering, you're going to have mathematics. You're going to have a certain level of score from your DevLet. If you're going into a Master's of Engineering, you have to have a Bachelor's of Engineering. So each program that you apply for has different entry requirements. And if you use one of our agents, so we've got 4 agents that are in and around the Turkey area, both in Istanbul, Izmir, Ankara. They will be able to look at your qualifications and your documents, and they will actually represent you for us. What are the accommodations, and are they affordable? Perakoç. Yes, of course they. I mean, affordable is a very sort of subjective term, isn't it? You're looking at about, if you live on campus, you're going to need about $250 per week to afford to live on campus. Living off campus can be a little bit cheaper, but then you have to factor in things like transport coming in, deposits on external accommodation. So it is affordable. You know, if you can afford to study in Australia per year, then you should have got that budget of about 30,000 Australian dollars in your head. If you have a budget of 30,000 Australian dollars, that will be enough for your living expenses. You have to show that anyway when you apply for your visa. Is it possible to do a double major? So double major is different from a double degree. If you're doing a bachelor's degree and you do a double major, you're doing a double specialization. So for example, if you're doing a Bachelor of Commerce, you can do a double major in applied finance and banking. That's a double major. A double degree is where you actually do a Bachelor of Business doubled with a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts. And yes, that is possible as well. It takes a little bit longer. It's the same price, but you pay every year. So it's 1 or 2 years longer. So it does work out a little bit more expensive. Is the school on a semester, trimester, or quarter system? It's on a semester system. So semester 1 starts in February, semester 2 starts in July, and they run for about 14 weeks each semester. Does your university give special scholarships for Turkish students, Mr. Koç, Perakoç? Yes, we do. As I said earlier on, if you are Turkish, or indeed if you're from any of the European Economic Area, you will get a $10,000 scholarship per year. Are there supplementary admission requirements such as an essay, interview, portfolio, or audition? Depending on what you study, actually, that's a very good question. Most of our programs, no. Most of our programs, we are only going to look at your academic background and your English language level. However, if you're going into medicine or physiotherapy or psychology or even some of the music programs, you might need a portfolio or an interview. 99 times out of 100, no, but for the flagship programs, yes. Okan Chakar, what can I do to improve my chances of being admitted? So Australia, that's a good question. We don't necessarily look at extracurricular activities. Like I said, the only thing that we are interested in, depending on what you're studying, is your academic background and your English language score. If you meet the entry requirements for your program with your academic stuff and your English, you'll get an offer. We don't cap the programs, which means we don't have a quota, okay? Which basically means that if you meet the entry requirements, you will get an offer. Medicine is different. Medicine does have a quota, and physiotherapy is different. We do have a quota. We've got a maximum number of students we can take, but the other programs we don't. Good academic scores, entry requirements 65% or higher, English language level of 6.5 in IELTS or above, and you'll get an offer. If you don't get the right academic level, as I mentioned, you can come through the diploma, through the college. And if you don't meet the English language entry requirements, we have an English language center on campus. That is actually the associate director is a guy called Professor Onur Ateş. Obviously, he's a Turkish gentleman that actually migrated to Australia about 20 years ago. Can I ask for more details about the 1-year diploma gap? Okay, that's a good question. So basically, what that means is that, let's say, for example, you choose to do a 3-year Bachelor of Business and you come from a Turkish high school, from the Devlet Lise diploma. You don't go straight into Bachelor 1, Bachelor 2, Bachelor 3. Your first year is a Diploma of Business, and it is essentially smaller classes, boosted classes, more attention paid on you. And as long as you pass that, okay, you will go into the second year of the bachelor's degree. So the diploma is done on campus in the Macquarie University College. So instead of going Bachelor 1, Bachelor 2, Bachelor 3, you do Diploma 1, Bachelor 2, Bachelor 3. It still takes you 3 years, but it is designed to pull you up because you finish high school 1 year before they do in Australia. Now then, that's pretty much answered everything. Does anyone have any more questions? Let's have a look in the chat box there. Hello, everybody. Okay, that's from
Right.
Zainab.
So, thank you very much for the great presentation, Anthony. It was very informative for the attendees. And you covered all of the questions. Thank you for your answers as well.
And everybody wrote the questions in English too. I had Google Translate open a minute ago.
Yeah, that was a good thing. Also, could you please share an email address on the chat box so if the participants have further questions, they can contact you in the future?
Absolutely, absolutely. So email address, anthony.bradley@mq.edu.au. So anthony.bradley@mq. That's my email address. So I'm more than happy for you to email me if you have any questions. And I can then, what we would do probably is I'll have a chat with you. We'll have a look at your questions if you've got anything. And then I'll refer you to one of our 4 partners that we have in Turkey who's basically I don't live in Turkey, of course, but they will be able to talk you through the application process. It's a free service. They will collate all your documents. They then submit the application on your behalf. And because they are our representatives, official representatives, it basically means you don't have to get your documents signed or stamped, and you don't need to send your documents directly to us. The partners will do that for you. Does that all make sense?
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Also, we had another question pop up from Arsun. Could you please answer that as well?
So from Ersun, Özdemirel, usual graduation timeline is mid-June, July. In Turkey, can applicants start process before having... So yes, you can do that. So what you can do is you can apply to us with predictive score. If you're doing IB, you can use your predicted scores. If you're doing the Turkish system, we can look at your predicted scores. And basically what that means is we will assess your application based on your predicted scores. If your predicted scores meet the entry requirements, we will give you what's called a conditional offer. Now, the conditional offer means you can't do anything with it until your results come through. But it does mean that as soon as your results come through, you can notify us and we can activate it. The problem with this particular timing is that it's not difficult for us to make an offer very, very quickly. The problem happens when you apply for the visa. So the visa processing can take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And because it is done by the Australian government, it's out of our hands, right? We're not allowed to contact the government to say, where is Ersun's email, visa, where is it? We're not allowed to do that. But what normally happens is if your visa is delayed or there's a problem in the timing of the visa, we will automatically defer you to the next intake. So let's say you want to make it for the July intake, but your visa doesn't come through in time, we will push you back to the following February. Hopefully that answers your question, Ersun.
Yes, thank you very much again, Anthony. And also I would like to thank the participants in Turkish as well. Katıldığınız için teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Umarım sizin için de faydalı bir webinar olmuştur. Macquarie University ile ilgili diğer sorularınız için chat kısmında paylaşılmış olan mail adresinden Anthony ile iletişime geçebilirsiniz. Bir sonraki webinarlarımızda görüşmek üzere. Thank you very much again, Anthony. It was a pleasure to have you in our IEFT Talks.
Çok teşekkürler arkadaşlar.
Thank you so much. Teşekkürler.
Okay, thank you everybody. Keep in touch. Send me an email if you want more information, and hopefully we'll see you at Macquarie University. Bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.